We are diving into our next hands-on exercise, and this is an exciting one because it is combining the power of AI that you saw in earlier hands-on exercises with your own proprietary content. This is something called RAG, Retrieval-Augmented Generation, and RAG is a pattern where we are using all the power of the foundational model for inference and its cohesive language skills and so forth, combined with our proprietary content, which the AI will retrieve, use for a moment, execute the command in a way that is consistent with the proprietary data, and this has some really interesting applications. The very first application that I applied when I became the Chief AI Officer was to take some of these Prism segments and turn it into something that was conversational. So this is a good example where we're looking at Major League Baseball and we're looking at Yankees. This is a profile of the people who buy Yankees tickets. They're most likely to be in the urban elder segment, followed by movers and shakers and money and brains and so forth. And these posters are things that exist within Claritas as part of the standard Prism segmentation. And there are other segmentations like Cycle, which is financially oriented, or Connections, which is technology oriented. And these segments give us narratives about the consumers, pictures of roughly what they might look like, and profile points like their age 45 to 54. This one lives alone, possesses undergraduate degree, highly likely to rent their homes, works in artistic and legal professions, appreciates fine arts, etc. And that is different than, say, the movers and shakers segment. Here's a picture of a couple, more likely to be married, age between 55 and 74, predominantly without children, favors luxury, cars, etc. What we want to do is retrieve data from these narratives and have a conversation with someone in that segment. Could we turn them into personas? And could you use synthetic data to, like in a virtual focus group, we've entered a question: what motivates you to buy baseball tickets, and what is the most important part of the experience, the game, the company, the food, something else? What's interesting about this one is it's more advanced than what we're going to get to in the white belt, but you'll begin to see how we piece this together as we get into the yellow and green belt, because with it being turned on here with the plus, that means that it's also using another agent that is tracing the consumer journey. In this case, it was buying a baseball ticket to a Yankees game and digesting the content and information that led people on that journey point and including that as part of the RAG. And you can see that there's different types of answers from the different groups and so forth. Okay, turning off this plus part, this just uses the Prism data alone without any of the other agent adding in information. So if we were to ask a question about why do you like baseball, now the answer is basically generic to the persona and not specific to that customer journey for buying a Yankees ticket. Now, there's other things we can do with a persona. You can turn them into avatars and you can have a conversation with them. Personas are getting more and more lifelike over time. There are many different use cases for retrieval-augmented generation, and there are many use cases for persona specifically. Here's one of the use cases that I found particularly interesting in my early testing. I trained an AI to read a website and, based upon the website, infer what type of segments would be most likely interested in that to help save time and money in the process of picking audiences for digital ad targeting. Now, this was really interesting because this marketer happened to launch their vehicle and worked with Claritas so that we could measure it, so we could see who is visiting their website and who is ultimately buying their vehicles. We could then compare that to the Prism segments that we thought would be interested in buying it based upon that simple early version of the AI. And all the segments out of the 68, the yellow highlights, concentrated towards the top segments that were most likely to index highest on buying that product. In fact, when we compared it to the ad agency, it was very similar to the ad agency. We are going to give you the data file, a narrative description, as well as over 5,000 data points. These are the incidents overall and the index relative to the US population. We can see about 14% of them use coupons via text message, and they're about 33% more likely to do that compared to the overall population. And so let's go ahead and look at the type of instructions that we're going to give to the AI. We will tell it you are a persona and to tell it a bit about the segment. We will give it a data profile. We'll tell it the role is to create a persona and a backstory with a name and description that is succinct yet informative, and invite users to have a conversation. We will also tell it about using RAG when answering questions. First, reference the file that we're going to give you and evaluate the index versus a total population. Give some explanation about how to use the index. We give it an example of how to use the data and that some of the data. And then if we wanted to, we could give it a few shot examples. You might need to do that as you tune it. So we'll come over to ChatGPT and we will copy in our instructions here. We'll make these available to you so you don't have to recreate this. We will go again into Explore GPTs, create GPT, and we will call this the Jenna persona, a RAG hands-on learning. We will give the instructions and we'll put in these two. Okay, we have these two questions. Would you like to know more about a specific category? Would you like to ask me a question? For the knowledge part, we're going to update that Excel file that I showed you before. We're going to turn off web search. We're going to turn off Canvas. We're going to leave image generation on because we might want Jenna to show us some of the products that she enjoys buying and be able to create images based on the data and so forth. So with this, we now have enough to test out the Jenna persona. We are also going to leave on code interpreter and data analysis because that's going to be necessary for that part 2 of retrieval-augmented generation to make sense out of the indexes and incidents. Now that wouldn't be necessary if you were giving it, say, a PDF or just a narrative description. It would need to do data analysis, so you might turn that off. Okay, let's go ahead and give it a quick test. Tell me about beverages you are more likely to drink compared to other people. Looks like stuff that's cold, sweet, and easy to pick up at the corner store. It doesn't cost too much. Energy drinks, pretty high. We'll ask it what specific brands of non-alcoholic beverages. Okay, so we see Monster and Red Bull. Let's go ahead and check back in the data here. Do a quick search on Red Bull. And yes, Red Bull past 7 days, 17% of the population did that with 180 index. So that's a pretty good answer. This gives a pretty good idea of how the RAG pattern works. Go ahead and see how you do in creating your persona and taking the conversation where you'd like to. So how did your persona build go? My option here, and I had a nice chat about some of the different products and services and purchases. Interestingly, when I compare it to Striving Selfies, which is where the segment comes from, 47, we can see that we get a little bit of a different answer and name, and you might have chosen to call yours something else. But I hope this gave you a good idea of what you can do. We can see that we get a little bit of a different answer and name, and you might have chosen to call yours something else. But I hope this gave you a good idea of what you can do with personas and retrieval-augmented generation. Keep in mind that retrieval-augmented generation is so much more than just personas. You can use this for standard operating procedures, training manuals, HR, basically just about anything that you have content, whether that's a spreadsheet, a PDF, a document, PowerPoint slides, etc., that you want the AI to focus on and use it as its main source of information. My favorite retrieval-augmented generation is using it for all of my notes and meetings, including some of this training material. There are so many great use cases for retrieval-augmented generation. If you'd like to see it in the real world, this is a paper I wrote for MMA Global on the transition from briefing to perpetual creativity, how Gen AI is reshaping creative briefs, and retrieval-augmented generation plays a critical role. In the case study for Progressive, the ability for Gen AI to create audio ads was dependent on it pulling in brand positioning, audience persona, message briefs. All of these were retrieval-augmented generation. If you'd like to see it in the real world, you can have a tag added to your website. We will do this for free, and you'll be able to see the type of personas that are visiting your website and chat with them and engage with them as you saw in this demonstration. Now, this will be free for a limited time, but I think it's so powerful to see with real world data that we'd love to have you give it a try.